Unmute my mic here. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group meeting. Very glad you're with us today. It's July 23rd, 2021. Our agenda today, we'll start out with success stories. We'll then go to our 30-second introductions. We'll allow everybody to put their introductions into the chat window, and then go to our committee reports, workshop, job fairs, pit crew, interview success workshop, the career tip of the week, and then we will hear from our speaker for the main event. We'd just like to please make sure, if you can, if you don't have your full first and last name in on the participant box, if you can't see your full name, please click, hover over the camera microphone button, and up will come the More feature, and then you can select Rename, and you can rename yourself so your full first and last name is on there. It'd be really appreciated. And then click that little blue box underneath where it says, remember my name for future meetings. That way, every time you're on a Zoom meeting, everybody will know who you are. For those using Zoom, if you have questions throughout our presentation, please just open up the chat box, enter your questions into the chat window. For those watching on Facebook right now, please enter your information into your questions and information into the comment field. I am monitoring that feed, and I'll be sure to get those questions answered for you. Oops. Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and the Career USA YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your name and picture to appear. Please note that comments in the Zoom chat window do not appear in the recording. Well, good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Morris. Back in 2007, I took over the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group as facilitating and leading it. The group's been around since the late 1990s. I took it over in 2007 when the leader of the group landed a job and asked who wanted to take over. And I think I scratched my face. He said, "Okay, Jeff, you're it." So, you know, whenever they ask for volunteers, remember to sit on your hands. In 2008, I created a website called careerdfw.org to help those in the Dallas-Fort Worth area in their job search. In 2012, after being invited to go to the White House, I launched a second website called careerusa.org to help people outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I have written a book called What I've Learned About Your Job Search That You May Not Know. And since 2017, I've been a member of the practice interview team, also known as the Pit Crew, and you'll hear more about that in just a second. Well, we like to start the meeting off with success stories. I didn't receive any emails this week. Do anybody on the line, please unmute your mic. If you've got success story if you've landed, please let us know.
I've got a couple. Oh, did I talk over you?
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I've got a couple, and I don't know that they were real active in this group, but I just wanted to share them. So Brian Plank has landed. He was a panelist for the Pit Crew, and he landed at 7-Eleven in a contract to hire opportunity, helping them develop software for their internal applications. So interestingly enough, his background was doing a very similar thing at American Airlines, and so he's gone from that transportation type of industry, even retail, to 7-Eleven. So he started, I think, last Monday. So congratulations to Brian. And then I have another one. I do believe she attended a few times, Smita Mehdi. Now, she landed at an IT company in her hometown, which is in Canada. I forgot the name of the town. But she found out about the Pit Crew through the Roswell Methodist Church in Georgia. And actually, she had a friend who referred her to that. They referred her to Frisco Connect. She was sitting in on a Frisco Connect meeting and heard me announce the Pit Crew and practiced twice, and now has landed an IT job in Canada. And so if you know people who are outside the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Pit Crew is able to help them, and they'll even land.
All right, great. We'll hear more about the Pit Crew in just a couple minutes. All right, let's move on here. All right, it's time for everybody to put their 30-second introductions into these chat windows. So if you will, or the Facebook comment field, please put in your name, comma, phone number, comma, email address, comma, position you're looking for, comma, 2 or 3 target companies, and then hit the return key. That way all the information will be right together. I will copy all that information over and I will put it out into an email this afternoon so that you can hopefully look over the list this afternoon, this evening, this weekend, and see who on the list, who can you help, who do you know at one of these companies, so you can try to help someone every day. So please put your information in. We'll put 30 seconds on the clock. You're welcome to continue on, get your information in there. That's by putting your information in the chat window or into the information field, the comment field onto Facebook. That's where I'll pull the names and update the roster. And anybody who's given me that information, you will get a copy of the roster with everybody's names on it. You'll get a list of all this information out here this afternoon. So if you don't put anything in the chat window, I don't know you're with us and you won't be marked as present here on the roster. For those on Facebook, I will go delete your personal information right after the meeting's over, so it won't sit out there forever and ever. So if you put your information in, I will go and delete it. All right, it's time to hear about job and career fairs, training and workshops. You had to listen to me for the last 2 weeks, but Eldon is back with us. Eldon, thank you for being with us this morning.
Hi, Howard. Good morning, Jeff. Thank you very much for filling in for me. I very much appreciate it. As Jeff said, I am Eldon Zarinsky, and I provide you with the career and job fair and special workshops information every week. The information that I'm about to present comes from the website careerdfw.org, and there it is on the screen in front of you. A lot of tabs on the calendar. Each one of those colors represents a different tab and information category. I focus on career and job fairs and special workshops or events. I do go through these things fairly quickly, so if you hear something that catches your interest, I urge you to go to the calendar, click on the right tab, find what you're looking for, and usually there's a link in there that will tell you more about that particular event and help you either register for it or whatever. All right, this week's career and job fairs. Job fair for art carriers will be held Monday, July 26th from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. at 1901 Midway Road in Louisville. And there is a link to register for that on the calendar. There will be a warehouse hiring event at 1600 East Plano Parkway in Plano on Wednesday, July 28th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. There isn't a link on the calendar for that one, however. Hiring event for the city of Dallas will be held at 1515 Young Street in Dallas on Wednesday, July 28th from 1 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. There will be another warehouse hiring event at 1600 East Plano Parkway in Plano on Wednesday, July 28th from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. The PTG Packaging Technology Group hiring event will be held at 2650 Sylvania Cross Drive on Thursday, July 29th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. There is a link in the calendar to find out more information about that hiring event. The Dallas Richardson Career Fair will be held at the Holiday Inn Dallas Richardson at 1655 North Central Expressway in Richardson on Thursday, July 29th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. And there is a link to find out more information about that event. There'll be another PTG Packaging Technology Group hiring event on Friday, July 30th from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 2650 Sylvania Cross Drive in Fort Worth. It's a fully air-conditioned facility, an open house, and they're looking for production and warehouse positions for first and second shifts. And finally, there'll be another one of these PTG Packaging Technology Group hiring events on Saturday, July 31st from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at 2650 Sylvania Cross Drive in Fort Worth. All right, this week's special workshops or events, online networking Mondays. Join Career DFW and careerusa.org each Monday from 1 to 2:15 p.m. Central for networking Mondays. They'll have different speakers each week talking about networking, and that'll be Monday, July 26th from 1 p.m. to 2:15 p.m. And there's a Zoom link on that and a Facebook link in the calendar for you to participate. Online, LinkedIn Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Join Locke Alderson or Terry Sullivan, Ruth Lipsky, or Kurt Vondemutter each week for an online session on how to use LinkedIn. There's a Zoom link and a Facebook link for that. Again, that's Tuesday, July 27th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m. Getting your resume past the ATS Gatekeepers workshop will be held on Tuesday, July 27th from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. You must register in advance for this webinar, and there is a link on the calendar to do so. Online again, the Who You Know Career Transition Summit will be held online on Wednesday, July 28th from 10 a.m. to noon, and there is a link to register for that. This is hosted by Foster Williams. And if you don't know Foster, I urge you to get to know Foster Williams. Online, Interviewing Wednesdays at 1 p.m. This is a 13-part workshop put on by Mark McDonald, who's the leader of our pit crew, and Walt Glass, who runs our interview success workshop. This week, July 28th from 1 p.m. to 2:30 p.m., session 13 of their 13-part series, Avoiding Interview Crashes. There's a Zoom link and a Facebook link for that to participate. And finally, online again, Resume Thursdays online. Join us each week for Resume Thursdays online with Carol Brickell, a certified professional career coach. And there is a Zoom link and a Facebook link to participate in that event. And that's it for this week.
Eldon, thank you very, very much. All right, let's see here. Coming up next. Just as a reminder, if you know somebody who just lost their job, we know that 419,000 people applied first-time unemployment benefits in the last week. If you know somebody who just lost their job, they're not sure what to do, please tell them about Career DFW and CareerUSA.org. Right there on the very front page, there's a banner. They can just lost my job. What do I do now? And if you click there for help, there's take you to a one-page article. And on that article, there's a lot of other links that will take you to some checklists and things you do so you can get your job search going, step 1, step 2, step 3, so that give people who maybe haven't lost their job before, give them some idea of what to do. All right, it's time to hear from the practice interview team. Good morning, Mark.
Well, good morning, everybody. And July is almost over. It's hard to believe. There we go. I just posted up the pit crew contact information on the chat window. That's a phone number and email address, and also my LinkedIn profile. So that'll make it easy for you to link in with me. The pit crew has officially entered the slow season, which is over the years that I've been doing it. It's not Thanksgiving, it's not Christmas, it's not New Year's. It is the month of August. And so, you know, what does that mean? That means the pit crew is available. We have some spaces available for you to come and practice. And I encourage you to do that because every time you practice, you're going to be better at interviewing. So practice early, practice often, and this is the way it works. We do a very focused practice interview experience based on a job description that you provide, you select, and you send in, and also your resume. So we'll adjust for the level of the interview you're in. For instance, if it's a first round, second round, third round, and we encourage you to come and practice for all the rounds if you feel that's necessary. Each time you'll get a different experience from the pit crew, and that's based on our volunteers. So the people who interview you have all been hiring managers and all involved in job transition. As a matter of fact, most of them are currently in job transition, and they're volunteering their time to provide the interviews and give you feedback on what you did well and what you might do better. And so that's how the pit crew works. And when you're ready to get involved, just send an email to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com and include that resume and job description that you'd like to practice against, and also your availability 2 business days ahead of the date that you send it in, and 3 business days, +2 and +3. Most of the time we'll be able to do it in 2 days, but sometimes it takes a little longer to set up. So I need to know 2 days worth of availability, and it's completely free. So don't worry about that, having funds to pay for this. If there was any charge, it'd be discounted to 0. So there you go. That's how the pit crew works. I also put my LinkedIn profile link to the LinkedIn profile link in the chat window. So that's how you find me on LinkedIn. And just send me a brief note that said we met on the North Dallas Career Focus Group, and that's good enough for me. I just like to know where we had contact. And I'll add you to my network, and that'll be a big benefit for you when you go to find people inside your target companies. Now, besides the two-way interviews that I just talked about, the pit crew also does one-way interviews. This is just an opportunity for you to practice. I give you the questions in advance. You can prepare, and there are 4 questions that are very common. You know, what are your salary requirements? Tell me about yourself. Things like that. So those are good things to practice, whether you're having a one-way or a two-way interview. But then we have a tool that Jeff has arranged for us to use. It's called Easy Hire. It's a tool that companies pay money for to manage their one-way interviews. And when you reach out to me, I'll send you a link, and it'll have the 4 questions in it and some background information about how it works. And then you go from there, just using the link I gave you to engage the tool. And once the interview is done, which takes about 12 minutes, you get 3 minutes to answer each question. Then you'll get another link to your video. So, you know, I'm really not involved after that initial engagement of providing you with the link. And so no one will ever see that video unless you choose to share it with them. And certainly nobody on the pit crew will see it as well. So that's how the one-way interview works. And again, if you'd like to do that, just send a request to dallaspitcrew@gmail.com and we'll get that done. And finally, we're wrapping up. Next week will be the final of the 13 series interview webinar that we have on Wednesdays. And this one is going to be about common mistakes. We call it avoiding crashes, avoiding interview crashes. And we're going to review the common mistakes that people make, even though they may know not to make them, they still make them. And based on Walt's interview success workshop, and the pit crew interviews that I hold, will give you some input into things that you want to pay special attention to avoiding. And then there's going to be, I think Jeff will fill you in, but there's going to be some special guest speakers for the next month, and then we'll start the series over. And so come on Wednesday afternoon at 1 o'clock. And did I forget anything? I think I've covered it all.
Yep, I think you got it all. Thank you very much, Mark. Good morning, Walt.
Well, Mark, you could add your fact that you also coach on why'd you leave your last job. So
I do
special interest in, for those of you that had a difficult time, perhaps a very negative experience on leaving your last job. I mean, I coach on that as well. Mark has very good in-depth. So if you're interested in talking with Mark about that, just contact him. So you just got too much to remember, Mark. That's all there is to it.
It's getting harder and harder.
Yeah. So a couple of comments. One is it's very interesting that a person left American Airlines and landed at 7-Eleven. That's pretty appropriate, I think.
Yeah.
And I want to also thank Brian Kaspari for putting in the chat window the companies that he could help connect you with. So he added not only the companies that he's looking for connections, but connections that he could help someone else if they're looking for those. So thank you, Brian, for that. So what do? Well, I really enjoy helping people get that confidence in an interview. And I do it by building some skills and ideas and thoughts and approaches and strategies to the basic questions in an interview. So it's very fundamental in its process. We cover the 11 categories. How do you answer these types of questions? What kind of options do you have? What kind of strategies might you use? It all depends on who's asking the question, what the question is, and where you are in the process to figure out how I might best approach that. So in doing that, we will do a Zoom interview. You will get an interview over the 11 categories. You get a handout and a video that goes over all the things in the handout, going through the basics and some extra things that go along with interviewing to help you prepare. What kind of information can you prepare prior to an interview? So be glad to have you sign up. You just send an email to walt.glass@yahoo.com. I'll give you some dates. Look me up on LinkedIn. It gives you some more details about how the process goes. Very informal. This is not a hot seat. This is a place where we're just going to learn. We want to put our learning hat on. So how do you do that? Well, you just get rid of the fear and anxiety by saying, I'm going to just enjoy learning how to improve myself. And when you put that hat on, then the interview becomes a lot less stressful. We have some fun, we can talk, we'll get through your interviews, you interview each other, I'll take notes, we'll have a long discussion on these type of things and your responses, and ideas and suggestions for improvement. So just send me that email and I'll give you some availability. I do it on Tuesdays, generally from 10 to 12, and then I'll schedule other sessions as demand comes across. So I'll be glad to have you come down and join. So it's not a hot seat. You can have some learning without squirming. Well, register for the workshop and the pit crew where you can practice your interview. Simply put on your learning hat, get the job, and that'll be that.
Thank you very much, Walt. All right, it's time to hear from the Career Tip of the Week. You can check out the Career Tip of the Week on the Career DFW or Career USA website. There's a new tip every Saturday afternoon. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Jeff, and good morning, everyone. And Walt, you always make me smile, so I'm always pleased to follow you. All right, so our tip of the week is entitled How to Pull Out of a Job Interview Process Without Burning Bridges. When you don't want the role, but you do want the contacts, you have to be strategic. The author is Monica Torres. Job interviews aren't just an opportunity for employers to find out whether you're a match for them. They're also your chance to determine whether the role is a good fit for you. When the answer clearly becomes no, you can simply tell the hiring manager that and back out, or you can see it as another networking opportunity. Particularly if you like the company involved, you'll want to maintain the relationships so that when a role you like comes around, they think of you first. Here's how. Number one, don't drop out right before an interview if you can help it. Once you've decided a role isn't for you, it's important to let the hiring manager or recruiter know as soon as possible, so it's not an inconvenient surprise. Unless something urgent comes up, backing out less than a day before you are supposed to have a job interview comes off as unprofessional. It's very inconvenient and could leave a bad taste in the employer's mouth because the interview panel has blocked off their schedule. That's time wasted on their side, said Gabrielle Woody, a university recruiter for the financial software company Intuit. Number two, in your rejection, mention which roles are a better fit for you. Career coach Jessica Hernandez recommends thanking the hiring manager for their time, connecting with them or their company on LinkedIn if you haven't already, and noting what kind of role you are looking for. If you want more of a leadership role, for example, you could say something like, after carefully considering this position, I've come to the difficult decision that this role is not the right fit for me at this time. The biggest factor in my decision to withdraw my candidacy was my desire to step into a role with greater relationship responsibilities. Thank you so much for your time and support during the interview process. I admire company name greatly and would enjoy working for your company in a position more aligned with my strengths and career goals. If I can be of any assistance in your search, please don't hesitate to reach out. If one of the reasons you're backing out is pay, you can be direct about your rationale with language, such as, these are the types of bills and loans and financial constraints that I need to make it work. If there is a role with higher compensation package that could help me, ... Number three, offer a referral to soften the blow. One way to maintain a positive relationship, offer the employer a different candidate you trust for this role. It shows this is a company you are willing to recommend friends and colleagues work for, and it helps the recruiter. Hernandez said you could share the referral offer after you let them know you are declining, with language like, I wanted to recommend name for the position. I worked with her at previous company for 10 years. She has the experience you're seeking and is looking for a role like this one. I would be happy to share her contact information if you are interested in connecting with her. Number 4, if you can, do this all over the phone. Woody said if you have not gotten through the phone screen stage, a rejection email is fine. But for candidates who have done interviews, taking the time to call the hiring manager and tell them directly about your decision is a much more thoughtful approach. The phone calls really do stand out because I'm always receiving emails. It sets the candidate apart a little more, Woody said. It also helps the employer see how genuine that candidate is being. I feel like sometimes on email, tone of voice, you're not really able to read that, she said. It also gives the employer the opportunity to ask any clarifying questions that could set the candidate up for success in future recruiting processes. Number 5, after you back out, check in to show that you are still genuinely interested in the company. To maintain a relationship with the company you want to join in the future, save interviewers' emails or connect with them on LinkedIn so you can send occasional messages that show you are still following the organization. In your messages, you can bring up points of commonality or the latest news about the company, like, I saw this article that reminded me of something we talked about. Or, wow, I saw the company increase the revenue by $10,000. Woody shared these as examples. The goal is for you to check in, to be a reminder about your interest. You'll be fresh in the recruiter or hiring manager's mind when a role does open up. If you would like to revisit this tip of the week, you can find it on the careerusa.org website. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you very, very much, Kelly. All right, the lunch report today. Everybody has to eat lunch. If you're fully vaccinated and you'd like to join us, please, today at 12:30, we're going to go to Jason's Deli. Jason's Deli, 4801 West Parker Road. It's on the northeast corner of Parker and Preston. For those of you, this was one of the 5 places that we used to rotate through after every meeting that we met in person. So if you'd like to join us at Jason's Deli today at 12:30. Okay, in just a couple minutes, we'll hear from Rich Blazevich to talk about how writing a book can help your career. I just want to mention about upcoming sessions we have coming up next week. The New Normal, Job Search and What Has Changed. This is from Kurt Vondermatter, who's a retained search consultant. He's going to tell you what he has seen over the last year and a half and what's changed in the job search process. And then as we do the first Friday of every month, we will have open forum on August 6th. Okay, well, now it's time for our main event. I met Rich a couple months ago, and I heard he did a presentation on how writing a book can help your career, and he's actually gotten himself into helping people write books. So Rich, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll let you tell people about who you are and what you do.
Great, thanks Jeff, and thanks for inviting me to be on here. I'm gonna go ahead and try and take over and share my screen. So let me get that up and going. And here we go. All right, so let me click off of this one so you don't have me on there twice. There we go. All right, so welcome everyone. I'm gonna start with a quote, and I was doing a little bit of research for this presentation, and I came across a book that I'm actually getting a lot out of. In this book, it describes many ways of taking a book, developing content, writing the book, publishing it, and turning it into a business. So the quote in the book was, there's magic in writing a book. The magic is in how your book propels you from a specialist to an expert to a thought leader. And I'm going to tell my story here in the presentation, and I'll try and weave in how my own experience and the experience of other people I've worked with has taken them from specialist to expert to thought leader status. So that's kind of the theme of this presentation. My goal for this presentation is I want you to seriously consider the idea of writing and publishing a book, whether it's to advance your career or to advance your business or just as an interesting hobby. It's turned into my favorite pastime. And so if you think you have a book in you, I would highly recommend follow the process I'm going to show you here. Get a book out of your head and into publication. It's a wonderful kind of a life accomplishment, and it's a lot easier than you might think. So specifically what we're going to cover is I'm going to show you 7 ways a book can advance your career or your business. And then I'm going to give you a really quick run through on how you can write and publish a book. If you stay until the end, I will give you instructions on how to download a workshop that I just posted this week. It's a video replay of a workshop that I hosted that is Jumpstart Writing Your Book. It has a lot of tips on how you can actually write your book and get it into publication. So it goes into more detail than what I'm going to show you today. I'll hit the highlights today. If you want to follow up, the workshop will take you through more details, and I'll show you how to get to it if you stay until the end of this presentation. And here's the audience participation part. So what I'd like you to do is go into the chat and enter what is your area or areas of expertise. So if you were going to write a book, what would the topic be? And then also, where are you in your book writing journey? Are you thinking about it? Are you committed, but you haven't started? Have you started writing? Are you done or almost done with your first draft? Or other? So if you could just take a second, go into the chat. I don't have the Jeopardy music, so I'll give you just a few seconds. And again, all it is area of expertise and where are you in the process? Oh, good. I'm seeing some good ones here as somebody put in their area of expertise is procrastination. So hopefully that's overcoming procrastination and not procrastinating. Got a few people who are thinking about it. Interviewing for job success, great. I like that one a lot. I've got a story myself about interviewing for job success from expert status to thought leader status. So I'll share that. All right, so keep going, keep populating. What's your area of expertise and where are you in the writing process? I'll tell you my story. So I've been wanting to write a book since I was a kid, and I got a lot of discouragement when I was growing up. I had teachers who were saying, hey, you're never going to be able to publish a book, so find a different goal. I had siblings who told me, nope, don't bother. So that stuck in my head for about 45 years. So I spent 45 years not writing a book. And then I ran into a friend who I mentioned to him, hey, one of my life goals is to write a book. And he talked me into doing it. And the first time I wrote a book, it was a long, painful, slow process because I didn't know how to do it. Since then, I've gotten hooked and I've started writing book after book after book, and I've gotten faster. So once you figure out the system, it is surprisingly easy to write a book, and it's surprisingly simple. I'm not going to say easy. Simple means if you follow a process, you can get it done, but it takes effort. Easy means you don't have to put any effort. So my theme is you will have to put in effort if you write and publish a book, but if you follow a process, it can be a simple process. My first book was what my area of expertise was at the time, which was marketing. And it, like I said, was a long, slow process. It took me a little over a year to write it. Fortunately, I found somebody who could coach me through the editing and publishing process. So that was surprisingly fast, but the actual getting it out of my head was not a smooth, easy experience. Since then, I've done a lot of research on what makes book writing easy, how to overcome writer's block, how to use an outline to accelerate your writing process. And so my next book took me about 4 months to write, and every book thereafter I've been able to write in about 4 months. I usually take a month or two to edit it, and then publishing it just takes a few days. So I've written 6 books, published 6 books. I'm writing book number 7 right now. That one will come out this fall. But if you have ideas in your head and you decide you want to get them out into book format, you will probably be surprised at how simple it is to do that. I now teach classes on how to write and publish books. So I teach classes at SMU in their continuing education program. I coach people on how to write and publish books. I have online classes. So I've left my corporate job. When I started writing books, I was working full-time corporate job, and I'll tell you a little bit about how to manage both of those. I have since left, and now what I do full-time is I help people write and publish their books. I'm a consultant. That's my job. I'm an instructor. I'm a guide. And I love, love, love the process of showing people how to, if one of their goals is to write and publish a book, that's what I enjoy doing. So here are some examples of, actually, I pulled up the wrong presentation. Okay, so there's 7 ways I'm going to talk about that writing your book can advance your career. The first one, so I have a client right now that he is establishing a business offering, and he's trying to figure out exactly what his business offering will involve. And he actually is going into the job interview prep business. He's mentored quite a few college students. He's mentored some early career professionals. And so he's really, really good at mentoring people, but he hadn't really established what is his offering for his clients. So he is using the book as a way to organize his thoughts, organize his services, organize his process, and he's creating a job search prep workbook that will be his first book, and it essentially will lay out what his business offerings are. So we're about 70% of the way through his workbook. He's writing it, I'm coaching him through it. It should be published by, our target date is by the end of September, having it published and in full distribution. Another example is another friend of mine who decided he wanted to go into a consulting business. And he wanted to show his potential clients that he had expert knowledge and he had credibility in the world of productivity. So he was a finance expert in the company I worked for. When he left the company, he wanted to go into productivity consulting. So he wrote a book on productivity processes, and then he used that book to market his consulting business. Number 3 is credibility for speaking engagement. So I've got a personal experience with this, and then I'm going to ask Jeff to speak in on his personal experience on credibility for speaking engagements. So one of my books is called Start to Finish Job Search. And I wrote an edition that was specifically for college students. And then my idea was, hey, maybe I could go to college campuses and maybe I could get hired for a speaking engagement. This month, let's see, it's July. So actually last month, because it was late June, a local university hired me to lead a workshop where I would be the featured speaker. And in that speaking arrangement, they paid me more money to speak than I've made in book royalties over the past year. So I'm not going to tell you you're going to be able to retire on book royalties, but I will tell you that if you write a book, you could come up with a very lucrative business. The way I turned my book, one of my books, into speaking engagement revenue. All right, actually, Jeff. So I'm going to have you just say a few words about how you've leveraged your book for your business.
Well, so, I mean, this isn't a business, but one of the things I did that I thought, leading this Friday group since 2007, one of the things that I remember, we had a speaker come once and he said, you're not going to remember everything I say over the next 60 minutes, but if you just take away one thing and do it, that's all I ask. Well, so this book sort of became, what was the highlight of the speakers, so that over the years, I kept hearing different speakers, 3 speakers every month talking about whatever topic it was. So I took their little, what was the one thing I got out of their talk, and sort of did a brain dump and just wrote it all down. It probably took me 6-8 months to do, because, I'd come home from a Friday meeting and I'd sit there and type up a page of, just type something up randomly, and then off I'd go and I'd come back. So now that I'm, once we get back in person, and when we were back in person and I was giving a lot of career talks about Career DFW and Career USA around the city, I had a book to take with me. And if people wanted to buy it, they could buy it, and it would help support Career DFW. So it was sort of a charity thing to keep on going. So that's how I sort of used it, as a way. And my brain's about 60 to 70% full again. And I'm going to have to do another brain dump here soon and write a book, more things I've learned about your job search that you may not know. So there's a second one coming at some point.
Good. Yeah, it's a great example of how you get knowledge in your head and you feel like it needs to get out. And I had a similar experience, as I had 45 years worth of information that was in my head. Once I started writing the books, the information just came out faster and faster and faster. And it was very useful at getting speaking engagements, getting consulting roles, you really do go into expert status. Another client of mine, a gentleman named Larry Hughes, has used his book as a way of building credibility for career change. This is actually a future career change. He's planning out ahead to say, hey, what might I want to do next? And one of the things he might want to do next is teach. And so he thought that writing a book and getting the content out into a format that he can show people will build his credibility. I'm a little bit jealous of him because his book is taken off. And if you go onto Amazon and you look for Challenging Goliath, look at the number of 5-star reviews. He just published it earlier this year, and he's just managed to really find his audience and really tap into leadership lessons that he's learned that he can teach to people in his future career. Another example is marketing any kind of a business. So I was recently part of a large career fair, and I was marketing my business. And they said, essentially, one of the criterias for being a featured speaker in that career fair is that you be a published author. So that was my ticket in to be able to market my business, was because I was a published author, I was able to say, hey, here's my book, please let me take one of your speaking slots. And so it wasn't a paid speaking slot like the university one was, but it was a great free speaking spot that I wouldn't have had access to had I not been a published author. Okay, so that's idea number 5. Idea number 6 is credibility with leadership. And so one of the ways that I leveraged my my book that I wrote as a hobby, my first book was just kind of a, hey, I'm just going to do it, it'll be fun, let's see what happens, was my boss's boss figured out I wrote a book, and she was the president of a division of the company that I worked for. I was on her team, I was a marketer on her team, and so she found out I wrote a book about marketing. She, from that point on, anytime we were in a customer meeting, anytime we were in a meeting where I had to speak up and give a presentation, she would point out, hey, this is the guy that wrote the book on marketing. And she would be like, make a real point of, he has so much credibility that he has actually written a book on this topic. So let's all pay attention to what he has to say, because he must know what he's talking about if he's written a book. Whether or not I knew what I was talking about might have been debatable, but if you want credibility with leadership and you write a book and the book demonstrates your credibility, you really, really bump up the amount that they're going to trust and rely and pay attention to what you have to say. And then one other example is credibility with employers. So another way to use a book is, if you want to go into a job search situation and you're coming down to 2 candidates, you and somebody else, and maybe the other candidate has more work experience, maybe they're just as good at you at answering interviews, although if you're on the pit crew, you should be able to beat them out in interviews. But if you're really coming down to the wire, I have heard cases where people have said, hey, if you want a little more information about my approach or my passion in this area, here's a copy of my book. And that lets you know that I'm really dedicated to this career path, or I'm really dedicated to this, this area of expertise. And that lets employers know, not only are you somebody who can do the work, you're also somebody who can lead the thinking in that area. So those are my 7 ways to use a book to grow your business or to grow your career. One thing I want to take away from the next section is, you can write and publish a book. It is much, much easier to publish a book now than it ever has been. And I'm going to show you some tricks for doing that. So let's go into some of the things you might think. I'm going to call this a mini Mythbusters section. You might think that you don't have time to write. That was my perspective. And when I wrote my first book, I had a full-time job, I had a family, I had activities. You would look at my schedule and say, not a good time to write a book. And if you want to go ahead and use the chat feature, go ahead and put in here, how long do you think it would take you to write a book? If you were going to write a book, do you think it would take you more than 2 years? Do you think it might take you between 6 months and 2 years? So let's say right around a year. Or do you think it would take you less than 6 months? When I started, I thought it would take me less than 6 months. And what I found out was because I didn't plan it, because I didn't prepare for it, because I didn't prioritize it, it actually took me over a year. Now I can write a book in under 4 months. And I'll show you some of the techniques for doing that. Because if you do it inefficiently, it could never get done. I know people who have been working on a book for 20, 30, 40 years, and they're not doing it efficiently, and they're never going to get it done. I also know people, Larry Hughes, who I showed you the example of, he wrote his book in under 4 months. I'm writing my books in under 4 months. I have other clients that are writing their books in under 4 months. So I see a lot of people thinking it might take them about a year. Here's how I figured it out. I looked at my schedule and I looked at where I was wasting time. And I waste time watching TV. I waste quite a bit of time scrolling through social media. So I don't know how many of you do this, but I'll sit down and I'll just start flipping through. I'll look up the clock and it'll be an hour later. And then one of my biggest time wasters are those silly games on your phone that when you're like, oh, I'm gonna sit down and relax, you open up a game, you play Sudoku or Clash of Clans or whatever it is that sucks you in, and you can play games on your phone for hours if you're like me. So what I did is I took those things and I said, okay, I have a choice. I can either continue to spend 10, 15, 20 hours a week doing all of these things, or I can carve out a little bit of that time and I can use that to write and publish a book. So I made the choice. I was going to be very deliberate. I was going to prioritize my time based on what I wanted to accomplish. And so let me show you some math. The math worked out to be, I said 5 hours a week. I'm going to very deliberately focus on writing. I'm going to get very efficient with that time, and I'm going to shoot for writing 3 pages an hour. If you're a fast writer, you can write more than that. If you're a slow writer, you might write a little bit less than that. But a pretty average writer, if they're writing in a very focused, deliberate way, can write about 3 pages an hour. And I did it for 10 weeks. So typically what I'll do is I'll try 2, 2.5, maybe 3 months if I have a vacation built in there that's going to take me away, or if I have a week that I'm going to take off in the middle of it. But I can write a 150-page book in 10 weeks. And so can you. You have to do some things ahead of time to prepare. But if you prepare and if you get your plan in place, in 10 weeks, you could have a 150-page book. And you might be thinking, 150 pages, that's pretty short for a book. That's a pretty standard sized book for a first-time author. It's very common, especially in the nonfiction world, that first-time authors write shorter books. And that way somebody who's reading your book is going to be, oh, I can commit to a shorter book. If I like the author and they have another book and another book, then I'll get one of their longer books. So I recommend start with a book that's between 100 and 200 pages long. Don't try and write a 1,000-page book your first go around, and then be very focused, be very deliberate. Okay, so you might think that you don't have the expertise to write or publish a book. And the truth is the expertise to do it by yourself. So what I discovered after I'd wasted almost a year is you don't have to do it by yourself. So I'm going to give you some examples of how you can get help from other people who can help you get your book written and published. The first place is freelancers are wonderful. If you've worked with freelancers on Upwork or Fiverr or Freelancer or 99 Designs or any of those sites that are now available, hopefully you are having as good of experiences as I am. I love working with freelancers. And I've got a checklist that has all the items that you need to do to write and publish your book. Any one of those items you could outsource to a freelancer. You could even outsource the writing. You could get a ghostwriter who you just tell them what you want them to write and they can write it. I don't recommend that. I recommend you write your own book, but you can absolutely find people who will edit and format and give you a book cover and upload your book and do your marketing for you. Freelancers can do anything you want them to do. Another example is writers groups. So I'm a member of the Frisco Write Club, a writers group in Frisco, Texas. Writers groups are wonderful for getting encouragement, for getting support, for getting direction. You don't have to be a member of a local writers group. You could be a member of a social media writers group. So if you feel like you might not be able to do this by yourself, then great, join a writers group and get encouragement from people who can support you through the process. And then guides and mentors is, I fortunately had somebody who was a mentor after I'd written my first book, and he helped me get through the publishing process. It's really useful to find people who've done what you've done, as is always the case in life, and get their help going through the process. So I'm going to talk a little bit more later on in the presentation about how to use a guide and a mentor, but that really unlocked the process for me, finding somebody who'd been through it and understood how to get through the publishing process. And then one other technique that I just tested out last month, I created an accountability pod, and it has been fantastic. So one of the things I found with quite a few of my clients is they didn't feel accountable to write their book, so they wouldn't sit down and do the writing. And so they go a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and they just, oh, I have something else to do. Oh, it's hot outside. Oh, it's cold outside. Oh, it's warm inside. Oh, it's there was always something distracting them, until we put them in an accountability pod. And what we would do is, there were 7 of us in the accountability pod. I was in it too, because I was writing a book at the time. And we would once a week state what our goals were for that week. It might be to write 10 pages. It might be to write 50 words. It might be not 50 words. Most of them were in the 2,000 to 10,000 word range per week. And then at the next weekly meeting, or at the next weekly check-in, we would be like, all right, you said you were going to write 25 pages. How many pages did you write? Oh, you only wrote 20 pages? Great. Next week, you have to write 30 pages. And we would set our own goals, and then we would hold each other accountable to accomplish those goals. I am hooked on accountability pods. So if you feel like you're just not accountable enough to write the book and follow through on it, I would highly recommend getting into an accountability pod. And you'll still be setting your own goal, but at least you'll have somebody that you're reporting back to who can tell you, either give you positive feedback when you meet your goals, or negative feedback if you don't meet your goals. So the next myth is, no publisher will want your book. And 10 years ago, that might have been the case. 10 years ago, it was really, really hard to get published. That's not the case anymore. It is kind of the secret in publishing is there are 4 different ways to publish. There's more than this, but these are the primary ways to publish. Traditional publishing. And traditional publishing means you get a big publishing company who takes your book, and they do the editing, they do the formatting, they do the publishing, they do the distribution, they do maybe even some marketing for you. That's the traditional way of getting your book published. The challenge with traditional publishing is traditional publishers decline 95 to 99% of the book submissions they get. So your odds of getting traditionally published are very low. That's where hybrid publishers came in. Hybrid publishers said, hey, if you want to publish your book, give us your book, pay us some money, and we'll publish it for you. So it became a business where you didn't have to wait for a publisher to accept your book. You could just pay and have a publisher publish it for you. Self-publishing came in where the bookseller said, hey, you know, we don't need you to go through a publishing company. You can just upload your book to our site and we will sell it for you. And then guided self-publishing essentially is you upload your book to a bookseller site and they publish it for you, but you get somebody to guide you through the process. So my first book, I did most of it, option 3, self-publish. And then at the tail end, I found some stuff I just couldn't figure out how to do. So I found a guide. So if you self-publish, and if you do guided self-publishing, you will find booksellers who will take your book. And I'll show you specifically which booksellers will do that. So pretty much most of the big booksellers now accept books directly from the authors. So Amazon has a super easy user-friendly system called KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. And all you have to do with Kindle Direct Publishing is upload your book manuscript, make sure it's formatted and it's in the right file format, and then upload a book cover, make sure it's in the right format and it's the right dimensions. They will publish your book. Provided it doesn't have anything offensive in your book, provided it doesn't have any formatting errors, provided it meets their guidelines, they will publish your book. Same thing now with Barnes & Noble Press, same thing with Apple Books, same thing with Google Books, same thing with dozens of booksellers that no longer get all of their books from publishing companies. They are now getting books directly from the authors. So it's a major unlock, made life a lot easier on the authors. And these booksellers are actually competing a little bit to get the authors' books, because they don't want your book to be on somebody else's platform and not on their platform. So it is free. They don't charge any publication fee. They don't charge any fees for you to put your book on their site. So self-publishing is free at the vast majority of platforms. There are still a few platforms that charge you to publish your book, a processing fee, but Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, Google, and dozens of other ones will publish your book for free. Okay, so you can publish for free if you self-publish or if you guided publish. If you hybrid publish, you're paying a company to publish for you. If you traditionally publish, it is free. It's just really, really hard to get a traditional publisher to accept your book. Okay, you might think that publishing a book is too expensive. And so if you go through a hybrid publisher, the going rate for them to edit, refine, and publish your book is in the $5,000 to $10,000 range. And the reason they charge so much is they typically hire labor that is fairly high-end labor, and then they typically have profit margins that are pretty nice profit margins. So they're going to make money off of you if you use them to edit and publish your book. Here is kind of the curve for those of you who like consultants. Hybrid publishers cost the most, but if they're an efficient hybrid publisher, they can trim down the timelines quite a bit, because you just write them a check, they put your book in their system, and your book comes out of the system and into publication. On the other end of the spectrum is traditional. The real time suck in traditional is the time that you might spend getting an agent, having the agent pitch the book, negotiating with the publisher, getting them to accept your book. I know people who have been pitching books to traditional publishers for decades. I have one friend who spent almost 15 years pitching his book to traditional publishers and hasn't been able to find a publisher who will take it. It's a great book, wonderfully written book. It's just traditional publishers have a lot more applicants than they have bandwidth to publish. So that it usually takes the longest. If you do self-publishing by yourself, it will likely take you a little while, because you'll have to figure out how to do it. And then the workaround is guided self-publishing costs less than hybrid publishing, because you're doing some of the work yourself, and it's quicker than self-publishing because you can you have somebody who's guiding you through the process. So here's a cost comparison. So these are real numbers. A typical hybrid publisher will charge you about $2,000 for a guide or a project manager or an account representative or whatever they call the person who manages your book through the process. They might charge you a few $1,000s for editing. So that's developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, proofreading. They'll charge you to get your book formatted. They'll charge you for a book cover. They'll charge you a fee for them to publish it and make it available to booksellers. They'll potentially get an ISBN, International Standard Book Number, for you. It's like a UPC code for books. They might charge you to register your copyright. They might charge you for a website. They might charge you for advertising. My typical budget for a client is to hire a guide, and the guide will take you through the process. Really cut back on the editing cost, because if you have a good guide, the guide will show you how to self-edit, how to get critiques, how to get other people to make sure your book is fairly well polished before you ever turn it over to an editor. Formatting's super inexpensive. Freelancers can take a book and format it for $30, $40, $50. Same thing with book covers. I'll tell you a little trick that I use with book covers. And then advertising, I recommend you just start with small ads on Amazon advertising, and until you've got revenue coming in for your small ad buys, don't spend a lot of money, because your small ad buys will generate revenue, which then you can invest back into more advertising. So that's a typical budget comparison on hybrid versus guided self-publishing. The nice thing about guided self-publishing is you only pay the guide once. Once you've published your first book, you will know how to go through the process yourself. So each book after that, you could spend $800,000 for the editing and the refinement. You don't have to pay the guide multiple times. With the hybrid publisher, every time you publish the book, they will charge you for a project manager. Guided self-publishing, you pay for it once, and then every book after that, you know the process and you don't need a guide anymore. All right, so that's a cost comparison. You might think that writing and publishing is too complicated. It was really complicated when I did it because I was doing everything by myself. I would watch YouTube videos, I would read books, I would find blog articles. I just patched together every little scrap of information I could find to figure out how to do it. And what I did is I recorded my process, and then I simplified it, and then I simplified it, and then I simplified it. So now I've got it down to 3 steps. First step is write a first draft. There are a few more details that I'll go into. Second step is refine the first draft so it becomes a final draft. And the third step is publish the book. So if we go into a little bit of detail, I have a checklist, which I'll tell you how to get, that takes you through each of those steps. The writing your book, there are 3 phases of writing your book. First is plan your approach, get your writing schedule in place, figure out what software you're going to use. I just use Microsoft Word. You could use Google Docs, you could use Scrivener, you could use whatever software you want, but you want to have a system in place. And that way you're into the routine and you can write without interruptions and you can write on a schedule. You organize your book. That means you write your outline, you kind of figure out what your topic is, you figure out who your audience is, and you organize what the content's going to be. And then you just dump content out of your brain in the order that's on your outline. So that's the writing phase. The refining phase is go through the editing, go through the self-editing, potentially get a freelance editor, go through the formatting. Most of us have enough computer skills we can format a book by ourselves. It's not complicated to format the file for your book. And then design a book cover. Most of us don't have the graphic design capability to design a book cover, so you're probably going to want a freelancer for that. And then publishing your book, preparing for publication. Some people like to buy an international standard book number, an ISBN. Some people just like to use the free ones from the booksellers. Some people like to register their book on copyright.gov. Some people choose not to. The actual publishing is super, super easy. It's just, you just upload your book file to the platforms that take your book, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Google, Apple, other platforms, and they will process it and publish it. And then you tell people about it. So that's it. As you can see, it's very clear, very simple process. It's just a matter of going through the steps in the process. Okay, so the bottom line before I get into Q&A is you can become a published author in less than 4 months. Like I said, my system that I use and that several of my clients are using is 10 weeks to write the book. So let's call that 2.5 months, about a month to do the editing and the formatting. Book covers are super fast. And then just a week or 2 to do the publishing. So in 3.75 months, add in a week to take a vacation, take a break, not think about it. You've got a book in under 4 months. All right, so I recommend, these are the criteria I would say is if you're thinking whether or not you're suited to write a book, here are the criteria. I think you're suited to write a book if you want to be a published author. That's a really good motivation for most of us. If you enjoy writing, so even if you're not super polished, I've never taken a writing class and I've published 6 books. So I have clients who say, oh, I can't write because I'm not an English major and I'm not a literature major and I don't have a PhD in writing techniques. You don't need education, you don't need training. You just have to be able to get words out of your head. Actually, I had somebody who told me that they actually wrote me a very long email explaining why they couldn't write a book. And I pointed out to them that if they can write an email, they can write a book. It's just a much longer email that turns into a book. You can write a book if you have a book idea in your head. And what we saw in the chat is most of you have an area of expertise. You can write a book if you want to learn a new skill. I learned a lot of information, a lot of skills on writing a book. I polished my project management skills. I learned some marketing in the process. So you learn a lot when you go through the book writing process. And then if you can spend a few hours a week. My writing schedule was 5 to 10 hours a week, depending on what my schedule was. So if you have 5 to 10 hours a week, even if you only have 2 or 3 hours a week, you can write a book. It'll just take you longer to write it. I don't recommend you write a book if you get easily overwhelmed. So if you get into projects and you're like, I can't do this, it's more challenging. It's definitely challenging to self-publish if you get easily overwhelmed. If you enjoy writing and you get overwhelmed, but you can write, you could get a hybrid publisher to publish it for you. If you don't want to put in any effort, it does take effort. It takes time. You have to get the words out. If you expect to get rich quick, I don't know anyone who is self-published who has gotten rich from their self-published book, from royalties from their self-published books. I do know people who are making a living using their book to get them consulting jobs, public speaking jobs. So the book is a way to earn money, but typically the royalties from the book don't become full-time income, don't become enough income that you can only sit back and collect your book royalties. And you shouldn't write a book if you don't have any interest in writing, unless you're willing to pay a ghostwriter to write it for you. Okay, so my question to you is, what do you want to accomplish this year? You have more than 4 months left in the year. You could quite comfortably, by the end of the year, have a book published. So you could have an entry on Amazon. People could search for your name, and on Amazon and on Barnes & Noble and on Apple Books, it could pop up and say, hey, here's this person's book. That was, first time I got my book was phenomenal. I actually ordered a paperback copy from Amazon, and I put the Kindle version up on Amazon, and I ordered that. And it's just wonderful to go up on Amazon and search your name and see your books pop up. Okay, Q&A. So Jeff, I'll get your perspective on how to moderate Q&A. Do you want people to just chime in? Do you want to do the chat feature? How do you want to do that?
Yeah, people, you're welcome just to unmute your mic if you have any questions. You know, like I said, I put together a book. I did most of it all myself. A little bit different process because I didn't really organize it. I'll just tell you quickly a little brief story about how I came up with mine is that, I was hearing these tips of the week or these tips in meetings. I would take the tip, I'd come home, I'd write up the tip, and I had this long Word document, and I didn't really, there was no organization. It was strictly, let me just type all this stuff up. And then eventually I said, okay, I think I may have enough stuff here. So I went and printed everything out. And so each one of my sections, I guess, was a different page or 2 pages. And I spread them out on the dining room table and said, okay, what order do these go into? And so I organized them and I went, no, let me try to organize it again. And then once I did that, then I went back and took my book or took the text of my book and, reorganized the Word document in that style. Then I found out on Microsoft Word, it has all the formatting tools as far as gutters and what kind of margins you need and how to put the headers and the footers and how to it automatically change with a new section. So, and then just like Rich, the first time I set my book off, I got a draft copy of it. I went through it. I marked it up with a lot of red ink because it was like, whoop, that didn't come out right. That didn't come out right. I showed it to some other people. They marked it up. I went and made all the changes, ordered a second draft. I actually went through 3 draft copies before I actually said, okay, I'm ready to go. And then I started ordering books. So you will not make a lot of money on this. It's just a matter of, it's the joy of seeing your name on Amazon. It's the, when you do go give a presentation, you do become more qualified. You become more of a, you qualify yourself on why you should be giving a talk. And I'll be glad to help anybody. If you ever, if you're thinking about it, you want to talk more about it, I'll be glad to, help share, talk about that, about how to do it, because everybody here, you all have knowledge. You all know, you're experts in your field. You all are qualified to do something like this. And as I was telling Rich, even if you don't want to publish a book, maybe you just start a blog. Maybe you just write some articles and you publish it on LinkedIn so that people can see what you know, because it may help you in your career by getting some knowledge out. And if you put enough little drafts out there, maybe it becomes a book. You take all these things, you put them together and you put them in as a book. So if you've got questions, please unmute your mic and ask away. Questions.
This is
Paulette, go ahead.
Paulette. Good morning.
Hey,
And
Paulette.
thank you guys, both of you. I also want to tag on to this. There's a lady out in California. Her name is Paulette, also Paulette Ensign, who has a huge business called Tips booklets. And just like you guys are saying, everybody has a book inside of them, everybody has a booklet. And she has had a thriving business for many, many years, and she's still on my case of when I'm going to write mine. But I encourage everybody else to find Paulette and go to tipsbooklets.com as a side thing for you guys.
Great point, Paulette. Is writing a booklet's actually a really good place to start. I'm going to build on Jeff's point on writing a blog is a good place to start. One of the people said they're writing a blog in the chat stream. And the way I'm writing my next book is I did the outline. The outline has 36 sections in it because there are 36 steps in the long detailed version of how to write and publish a book. My next book's going to be how to write and publish a book. And what I did is I outlined the book, and now I'm taking those 36 topics and I'm writing a blog article for each one. So the book is going to have 3 or 4 pages on each one of those 36 topics. And then I'm going to take the blog and I'm going to package it up and I'm going to publish it as a book. So actually another great point is one thing that some of my clients are doing is they're writing a book to get all their content in one place. And then they're going to take each section of that book and they'll do a YouTube video, or they'll do a training session, or they'll do an online course. So writing a book isn't necessarily a stopping point. Writing a book can be part of a process of having a blog, having a YouTube channel, having an online course. It's just a really good way to get all of your ideas into one place so that then you can be seen as credible and you can leverage your ideas in multiple venues. Okay. Any other questions or comments or rebuttals?
David, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. I do have a few other questions that I've gotten from other students when I've taught, so I can go through those questions. And
Well,
then
go ahead. David unmuted his mic, so David,
okay,
go ahead.
I did. Hi, Rich. Thanks for being here today. I'm just curious. So you've talked a lot about some of the myths and things that people prevent them from getting started. I think probably the biggest challenge I would have is trying to figure out how to narrow down a topic into something that would be suitable in, say, 100 to 150 page book. Do you have any thoughts on how to go through that process?
Yeah, it's a great point. And one of the first things I do with a client is we have an outlining session. And I'll have clients that are like, oh, I want to write my memoir and I want to talk about this and 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 this. It's like, okay, great. It sounds like you want to write 8 memoirs. So let's pick one topic. Let's identify who is your audience. What is your audience going to get out of your book? Like, why is it they're going to want to read your book? Is it pure enjoyment? Are they going to want to learn something? Or are they going to want to relate to somebody who went through similar experiences as them? But let's really get tight on who is your audience and what topic do they want to get? What do they want to get from your book? And if you have 10 ideas in your head and that relates to 10 different audiences, they shouldn't be in the same book. If each topic is 100 pages or 200 pages long, then great, you've got the makings of a really good book series. And then getting all of that content out, we have a brainstorming session and a technique that I use that is a complete brain dump. Like every idea you have that you want to consider for your book, let's get it out. Once it's out of your head, let's prioritize them. And then once they're prioritized, let's batch them into how many books do you have? How many acts in your book do you have? How many chapters in your book do you have? So, but I completely agree. Is I have published 6 books, and when I started, I probably had 4 or 5 of those books in my head, and it took a lot of focus. And that's why my first book took me over years. I kept getting distracted. Now, the reason I can write a book in 10 weeks is the first 2-3 days, I am, what do I want to cover? What do I not want to cover? What does my audience want to know? What does my audience not want to? Who is my audience? And then how can I lay out the information in a way that is enjoyable for the audience and easy for them to process? So,
Great, thank you.
thanks for the question. Great question. I know there are people probably on this call who are like, outlines, no, I'm not going to do an outline. I'm just going to write. You can do that. And there are people that are called pantsers because they write by the seat of their pants. Some very famous, very accomplished authors are pantsers, and they don't do an outline. There are lots and lots of people who try and pants and run out of steam because they don't know where their book is going to go next. And there are plotters. I used to be a pantser, now I'm a plotter. There are plotters who plot out the book ahead of time and then they write. You might have ideas that come up after you've written your book that you're like, oh, it's not my outline. Great, change your outline. You can always update your outline. You can always rearrange things on your outline. But if you don't have an outline, the odds are much higher that you're going to run out of steam and you're not going to know what to write next. All right. Oh, somebody asked, what's my website? So I'm going to put that in the chat feature. So I'm going to give you, I just hit enter. So you've got my LinkedIn link. So if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, please do that. You've got my email address. That's my personal email address. I just rebranded my website and the website is up and running. I'm in the process of transferring over my old branded work email to my new branded work email. So in the next week or two, I'll have an email address that is at yourpublishingguide.com. The website is just yourpublishingguide.com. The page to get the 40-minute workbook workshop is yourpublishingguide.com/workshop. Actually, let me go to that page so you can see it on the screen. So if you want to contact me, my LinkedIn link is in the chat. If you want to watch a 40-minute workshop that goes into a little more detail, it's a little bit repetitive of what I did today, but it does have some additional information in it. You can watch that workshop. And that workshop is, again, 40 minutes. You have to, because it's a recording, you have to go onto the registration page that I put the link to, enter in your email address, and then it will send you an email with the link to the video. So it's like a 2 or 3 step process, but it's free. So if you're willing to spend a couple of minutes to enter in your email, go to your email and click it, you'll get the 40-minute workshop video. The checklist that I put up on the screen is also available on my website, and that's on yourpublishing.com/checklist. Or you can just go to yourpublishing.com and click on the link to the checklist, click on the link to the workshop. They're all linked from my homepage.
Great. Anybody else have any questions you'd like to ask? All right, well, you said you had some FAQs, so let you back up and.
Yeah, let me go through the frequently asked questions that I've gotten from students in my SMU class or from clients that come up. Next, first one is, I want to write a memoir. Is that a good place to start? Absolutely. I've got about 40% of the clients I have are writing memoirs. And part of the beauty of writing a memoir is you don't have to do a lot of research because you're the expert. They're your memories. And memoirs can be 100% nonfiction. Memoirs, you can build in a little bit of fiction. You can write a book that's based on your experiences where maybe you change the ending in your life story, or maybe you elaborate, or you remember details that might not have really been there. But I think memoirs are a fabulous place to start. I actually have 1, 2, 3 clients right now that are writing memoirs about traumatic experiences, either medical experiences or a trauma that happened to them. And they say it's very cathartic. It helps them get their emotions out. It helps them get their, put their life into perspective. So if you have something that you're willing to relive that's dramatic, getting it out into a memoir is a great way to do it. Nonfiction books are fabulous. I'm a big fan of writing nonfiction books because it's a wonderful way to pass knowledge along. I only have one client right now who's writing fiction. And again, if you have a fiction book in your head, great. It's a very different skill to be able to generate a completely new fiction story than it is to take a nonfiction topic and make it clear and compelling and interesting. Good. I will do another Q&A. If you have a question, chime in. Another frequently asked question, what if I get stuck and can't figure something out? So remember I told you there are 3 or 4 different ways to not have to do it by yourself. So you can join a writers group. As a member of the Frisco Writers Group, I love writers groups. I'm also a member of several social media writers groups. You can hire a freelancer. You can get a guide or a mentor who will take you through it. And you can be in an accountability pod. So those are my 4 suggestions. Is if you get stuck and you can't figure something out, leverage a writer's group, leverage a freelancer, leverage a guide, and or leverage people in your accountability pod. How long does my book need to be? I covered this partially when I was talking, but Amazon's only requirement is if you're doing a paperback book, it has to be at least 24 pages long. I know everybody on this call has more than 24 pages worth of content in their head, so you could crank out a 24-page book very easily. It can be short. People now are reading novellas, they're reading novelettes, they're reading collections of short stories. One of Stephen King's first book was Skeleton Crew, and it was just a group of short stories. So you could start with short stories. You could start with blog articles that you string together and put into a book. You could start with a booklet. So start with however long the topic is in your head. If your topic is 1,000 pages long, then break it down into sections so that you can release it 100 pages at a time, 200 pages at a time. Okay, I'll go a couple more. How long will it really take me to write your book? It depends on how much of a priority it is for you. Really quick story is, I'll do the really short version. The really short version of the story is you can tell what is a person's priority by looking in 2 places. You look at their calendar and you look at their checkbook or their automatic payments or however you track your finances. Something is really truly a priority if you're spending time on it and if you're spending money on it. So if you take your resources and you put your resources into something, it's a priority. If you think it's a priority to write a book, but you're not spending any time on it, then it's not really a priority. So if you want to set the goal, this is a priority, I'm going to do it, great, put it on your calendar. Another thing is find a place to write where you're going to be productive. I actually can't write in my house. There are too many distractions. There are too many issues. Some people can. Some people have a room they can sit in and write. My writing place is a coffee shop that has a comfortable chair. It used to be a Starbucks in Little Elm. Now it is a Golden Boy coffee shop in Plano, Texas. But I'll basically go around to coffee shops until I find a comfortable chair with good coffee, good snacks, and I just put my headphones on. I don't even play music. I just put my headphones on to block out distractions, and I type. And when I do that, I can be very focused, very productive, and it takes me less time to write my book because I'm productive. The other thing is I have a regimen. So writing regimens can be really useful. So my writing regimen is I wake up early in the morning, I take my dogs for a walk, and while I'm walking my dogs, I'm thinking about what I'm going to be writing about. I look at my outline before I go for the walk. So I'm like, all right, today I'm going to write chapter 3, 4 pages, and it's on this topic. So put my dogs on my leashes and I start walking until I've sorted through the ideas in my head and I'm ready to get them out. Sometimes my dogs get a 5-minute walk because I know what I want to write about. Sometimes my dogs get a 2-hour walk because I'm sorting through the ideas. If I can't figure out, like one of my books is how to write a resume. And if I get to a stopping point and I'm like, oh, I don't know how to frame up the experience section, what I'll do is I'll listen to 6 or 8 or 10 YouTube videos on how to frame up the experience section or how to write a bullet point or how to this or how to that. And I will take all of that content in as research. I will process it. I will find my voice and my way of simplifying it, and then I will output it into a book. That's not plagiarism. That is research. So it's okay to read other authors. It's okay to watch their YouTube videos. It's okay to read their blogs. It's not okay to copy their approach, but it is okay to listen to their approach, process it, and do your own variation on it. Okay, do a couple more. Hybrid publishers charge $5,000 to $10,000. Why is it so much less to do guided self-publishing? 3 reasons. One is you are going to do some of the work if you do guided self-publishing. You're going to do self-edits. You're going to potentially format it yourself. That's something that you can do that you don't have to pay a hybrid publisher for. You can use freelancers that are at a much, much lower billing rate than the hybrid publishers. Hybrid publisher might be paying somebody $50 to $100. You might be using a freelancer. I have a really talented freelancer that charges me $25 an hour because she's in the Philippines. So for her, $25 an hour goes a long way. And so you can get super talented people, and a good guide and a good mentor should be able to show you how to find people who have expertise that don't cost a fortune. If you do it by yourself, you might end up paying an editor $1,000 when if you have a guide who shows you how to do it, you might be able to get the same editing done for $200 or $300. Okay, let me go. Budget seems, oh, I forgot to tell you the story about the book covers. So really quickly, I found 3 ways to do book covers. There are places on the internet that have free book cover templates. They're not very interesting. They're basically a background with a pattern on it with a place for your title and your name. So you can get a free book cover. The most expensive way is you can hire an illustrator to illustrate your book cover. And an illustrator that is talented and in a country that has a high cost of living will typically charge you between $500 and $1,000 for a custom book cover. In the middle of that is the less expensive, higher quality version. It's higher quality than a template. It's less expensive than a custom made book covers. You can host a book cover contest. And you can go to a site like freelancer.com and you can say, I will pay $50 to the winning entry. I want a book cover that has this title, it has this mood, it has this color, it has whatever direction you want to give them. And you open the contest. Last time I did a book cover contest, I gave a $50 prize. I got 191 entries. And I only had to pay the $50 to the best entry. The person who had that best entry now has a book cover that I've used, and now they built their portfolio because they have a published book with a cover they designed. All right, I'm going to try and wrap up in the next minute or two. Any other questions? Any other thoughts?
Anybody else?
Okay, let me put it on one last page. If you just want to talk more, you're welcome to email me. I also have appointments that if you go onto my website, here's the, excuse me, here's the address for scheduling an appointment with me. That takes you into my Calendly app, and my Calendly site will show you my availability. Just book an appointment with me. I'd love to talk to you about your book idea.
Well, great. Well, Rich, thank you very, very much for your time. Great information today. If you want to connect with Rich, like I said, he's giving you information on his website. Here's what his LinkedIn profile looks like. If you want to connect with him on LinkedIn, be sure to send him a personal note, though. Let him know you saw him here today presenting today. So, Rich, thank you very, very much for your time. I think it's for everybody here, you've got knowledge in your head. Get that knowledge out, whatever your expertise is. If nothing else, it helps you in your career search because it's going to help you tell stories. Because if you're writing this stuff down, it'll help you with your star stories. It'll help you with interviewing because you'll be able to share your successes of what you've done. So, consider spending a little bit of time doing this. All right, next Friday, our speaker is Kurt Vandemater. He's a retained search consultant. He's going to talk about the new normal of job search and what has changed over the last year, what he has seen over the last year and a half. For those of you who have not put in your 30-second introductions into the chat window, we ask that you do that. I'd like to have your name, comma, phone, comma, email address, position you're looking for, comma, a couple of target companies, and then hit the return key. I will get that out into an email this afternoon to everybody. So, please do so if you haven't done that yet. For those on Facebook, I will delete your personal information as soon as the session is over. Join Career DFW and Career USA. We're putting on training 5 days a week. Next Monday, we have a speaker. I just lined her up yesterday. She's from California. She's going to talk about networking. Her story is really pretty amazing how she has networked her way in. One of her youngest pictures that she has, or a picture she has when she was a child, is her standing next to Walt Disney when Walt was at her house to see her dad. So it's just interesting how she has sort of fell into the whole networking thing. So it'll be a very interesting presentation this coming Monday, 1 o'clock. Tuesday, for LinkedIn Tuesdays, LinkedIn Search Engine Optimization with Ruth Lipsky. On Wednesdays, we've mentioned before, session number 13, how to avoid interview crashes, things that Walt and Mark have seen that can really hinder your interview process. And then next Thursday, Carol Burkell will be with us to talk about resume tips and tricks. So this session has been recorded. You'll be able to go back and watch it on the Career DFW Facebook page. and the Career USA YouTube channel. It'll be up on YouTube probably in about 2 or 3 hours. It takes a couple hours for them to process the video. Please follow us on Facebook. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'd really, really appreciate it. On the YouTube channel, it looks something like this. You can click on playlist and then pick whatever topic it is that I've put together. So resumes, interviewing, LinkedIn, or the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group. Don't click on the video, but click down below where it says view full playlist, and then up will come a list of all the different topics and dates and topics that we've talked about. It is in chronological order. If the newest one's not on the top, please just click on that little sort button at the very top to get to the most current one. Thank you for joining us today, everybody. Have a great weekend. Rich, once again, thank you very much for your time, and we'll see you all next week. Oh, and if you want to join us for lunch today, we'll be at Jason's Deli on Coit, and it's on up in Plano. We'll see you up at Jason's Deli, 12:30.
Are you going to bring some books, Jeff?
I will bring a couple of books with me, yes.
I'll take one. I'm going to reserve my copy.
Okay.
This is Brian.